The next basic skill I want to discuss briefly is the basic head snap. When you can't attack the legs, it's important to think about perhaps attacking the head, because if you can't attack the legs, typically your opponent's head is going to be down in a favorable position to attack his head. What I want to determine is how low my opponent's head is relative to mine. If his head is slightly lower than mine is when we're on our stance, typically at that point it will be difficult for me to be able to get in at his legs. However, because his head is somewhat lower, I'm going to be able to attack his head. So that's what I'm going to do instead of trying to attack his legs, which are probably going to be better defended because his head is lower. There's a basic principle that you can't go anywhere without your head. So if you can control your opponent's head, typically you can control your opponent, you can control your opponent's motion. If Colby and I are in a situation where we're both attacking each other, and I notice that I'm having difficulty attacking his legs, one reason why I may be having difficulty attacking those legs is because his stance is somewhat lower than mine. And specifically, his head may be somewhat lower than mine. That, of course, gives him a somewhat more of an advantage to be able to attack my legs. On the other hand, that also gives me the opportunity for a head snap. The basic principle here is going to be controlling my opponent's head. I'm going to make sure that I keep one hand down as I approach my opponent in preparation for this technique. If I am bringing both hands up, I'm very vulnerable, and Colby here is going to attack very successfully, probably because my arms aren't in the way to block or defend his attack. So as I approach my opponent, this hand is low so that if he does attack, I can block. We'll be going over defense in a future DVD, but for now, it's critical that you understand when I'm attacking the head, I'm attacking it not with two hands, but with one hand with another hand low, such that I can guard against my opponent's attack if he chooses to attack at that point. Now, what I'm going to do with the top hand, the bottom hand approaches in to be able to block him if he attacks. I'm going to club his head down. My hand is kind of hooked here. Okay, I'm not going to be like this. I'm going to use my whole hand and my whole wrist. I'm going to club it down, and I'm going to try to pull his head down and block him with my forearm. Boom, here. I'm going to pull it in here. At the same time, this forearm moves forward. Boom. To here. I don't want to pull him all the way in my leg. I want to stop his momentum. To here. Down, in. Down, in. It's important that I can do that simultaneously. Once I get that position, I want to be able to hold it. So I'm going to pop, and I'm going to block here. Now, I want you to notice that my forearms are on the side of his neck, and they're pinching together. They're pinching together. At the same time, my top hand is cupped around the top of his neck, and my bottom hand is going to be cupped around the bottom of his neck. And my goal is to make a circle here that's tight sideways, tight up and down, that this circle has to be smaller than his head. If it is, and I can maintain that, he will not be able to pull his head through. In other words, he will not be able to retreat by pulling his head through. And that's the critical point once you get that position to be able to control your opponent. Because you're in very good position because his head is down below your head, you're blocking with your body, it's very difficult for him to attack. So, I pop the head down, I block here, I pinch tight here, I cup his chin, cup the back of his neck, and I'm in like this, tight. You'll notice my legs are slightly back, but if he tries to push in, he's going against my sternum here. If I let his head out, bad news for me. Or on the other side, bad news for me. I prevent that by keeping my elbows in. So I control his lateral motion with my forearms, pinching my elbows in, pinching my forearms in. I control his chin, and I got this right around his throat, or it's around the bottom of his neck. And I've got my top hand around the top of his neck. So I'm pinching sideways and I'm pinching up and down as tight as I can. The back of his head is going to stay pretty much in my sternum here, like this. What I'm going to do typically from this position, and we're going to go over a lot of variations and techniques, but basically all I want you to do from here is to come down. And I want you to notice where his weight is. His weight is forward as opposed to back on his haunches here. His weight is forward. Why is that important? My opponent, when his weight is forward on his hands, has a much more difficult time capturing me as I spin because he's supporting his weight on his hands, as opposed to when his weight is back and I attempt to spin, he has no problem capturing my leg. So when I pull my opponent down in a snap down position, I want his weight forward such that he has to support his weight on his hands so that he doesn't smash his face into the mat. It's at that point where I can begin doing a lot of my attacks, which we'll be going over in a different DVD. But that is what you're trying to go for. Not just pull him down to the mat so that his weight is back here on his haunches where he has some defense and he can begin to initiate some attacks, but down on his hands with his weight forward. Once more. I come in here, I block here, boom. I capture the chin, the back of the head, I'm pinching, pulling down. I'm making this circle as small as I can so that he cannot retreat out of it. The back of his head is right in my sternum. And you'll notice if he drives into me, I'm not just going to try to back up. If he drives into me, I'm going to come up this way on him. Okay? Can't do that in wrestling. But of course in mixed martial arts, we can do that type of a technique. So for him to attack me, he has to get his head out to the side. And that's the game for me, is to make sure he can't do that. If he pushes out this way, I got to block his head in. If he comes out the other way, as long as I can keep pinching, I'm in good shape. And if he attacks me, I'm not trying to throw my legs back, although if he does attack me, I can pull him down. But to keep us up on our feet, all I need to do is be confident in this grip. Grab my legs, Colby. Pull my legs in. I'm in good shape there. Okay? And that's a position, when we go over defense, I'm going to teach you, a lot of times sprawling is not the best alternative. So when we're controlling the head, there's a time to snap down and put his weight forward, and there's also a time to hold him tight here, and we'll be working more techniques from that position again in a future DVD. Okay? But I'm just getting the point across that if you have that position, you're in good shape. When you're in this position here, tight, you can keep your legs fairly close to your opponent with confidence when you understand the proper position and what to do if he does try to attack your legs. Now, related to that, and we'll be going over a similar type of principles in future DVDs when we go to actually attacking doubles, singles, high crotches and such, is that whenever I have a grip on my opponent, I'm just going to give an example here. Sometimes our opponents are really tough and do get out, okay, even though I do my best to pull him down. If he does pop out, though, I never just want to let my opponent go. Because when we get to actual single leg attacks, for example, if I'm sagging hard here such that he is going to blast out simply because he's stronger or I have not got the grip as successfully as I had hoped, I don't want to just let it go. I want to be able to transit. First, I want to be able to keep that grip as long as I can. I'm going to hold on to it every partial millisecond I can. And then when he gets out, that's when I'm going to attack. That's just an example, and I don't want to get into too much of the actual attacks now. But I do want you to keep in mind that when you have a grip, and it could be a two-on-one situation, or for example this that we just went over, when our opponent does begin to defeat us by being able to retreat, I never want to just give up and let go. I want to hold on to it as long as I can, because his motion is so hard up at this point that when I do let go, boom, I have the ability to attack. And so even though I'm losing the position, in another sense that gives me an opportunity. So kind of tuck that in the back of your mind. That will make sense in more of the future DVDs when we go over attacking doubles, singles, and high crotches, etc.